Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Cold Steel Ti-Lite. This is the 4-inch variant with aluminum scales and S35VN for the steel. I will link this guy right down below, but the Ti-Lite comes in many different variants. It used to come, or at least this version is sold out right now. This is the same version, but it's got the plastic and Aus 8 steel for even less money. This was intriguing to me. These knives were sent to me by Super Steel Steve. Shout out to Super Steel Steve. I really appreciate you sending these in. This is intriguing to me because I didn't know that they made an aluminum and S35VN variant, and I was also amazed at the price, $87. That's pretty cool. Now, this isn't traditionally the type of knife that I like to carry. I understand how this knife was designed. I review knives as tools, so I'm going to be talking about this, for people wondering, will this make a good tool? And that's going to bother some people, but the truth is, guys, is that 99.99999% of the time, what you're going to be using this knife for, regardless of who you are or why you bought the knife, is going to be in the setting that would require a tool. So it makes sense, regardless of what this is or it's the design philosophy behind it. It makes sense to talk about whether or not I think it actually makes a good tool, because you'll likely, this would, for a lot of people, would be their dedicated carry knife, right? Anyways, this will be linked down below. All the different variants of it will be linked down below, and I'll try to link Cold Steel knives in general as well, so you can check out what else they've got going on. Thanks so much to my generous patrons who are supporting me right now. There's a link for Patreon down in the description, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this guy. Not a small knife. It's kind of got a thin look to it. It's got an old kind of a Italian stiletto look to it. Overall length is coming in at 8.75 inches overall with a 4-inch blade. Cutting edge is exactly 3.5 inches. It's going to be illegal in some places. Just keep that in mind. How about some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1? There you go. It's deceiving, the size of it. And the Ontario Rat Model 2, definitely longer than both. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3? Once again, definitely longer than both, but not quite as tall. It does have some aggressive flipper tabs. We'll talk about that. Last but not least, the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, and its little brother, the Mini Griptilian. So there you go. Long, slender knife, at least in the blade. Handle, not so much. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. So thickness, we'll do the front and the back. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see here it tapers down to reasonable thickness at the top. The button, though, is really going to point out, yeah, this knife does have some thickness to it. Absolutely. Now, it fills out the hand, which is going to be important to a lot of people, but just so you know, as a carry object, this way, it's just like a long, slender thing, and it's got this big deal pointing out here, right? It's not terrible, but it definitely is thick, and you're going to notice it in the pocket if you've been carrying knives like this. It just really depends on what you've been carrying. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. By the way, Steve, when he sent this to me, it was off-centered, and that's probably because he's been carrying and using it, which is fine. So I went ahead and recentered it for you, so it's good to go. If you receive this, if you buy one of these brand new and it's slightly off-centered, that can be frustrating. I get it. We want our knives to be centered. I do have a video on how to center your blade, and it's really easy as long as you've got a piece of paper and some tools. You can actually get mine if you want. Get out my tools here. Let's see. I believe the pivot is, if I remember correctly, it is a T10, because I should remember correctly because I just did this like 20 minutes ago. The pivot is a T10. There are a lot of body screws. 1, 2, 3, 4 on each side. That's a little bit excessive. And no, wait, it's not on each side. I'm sorry, this is the Chicago end. So there's 4 total. All right, but total pieces of hardware. We have this enormous backspacer back here, and it required all of these to hold it in. Why didn't we just do it right here? Maybe because the blade would have ended up not being covered completely because of the profile, right? So maybe they were keeping people from keeping their fingers off of it. Either way, right? It's not the best thing in the world. It's not the worst thing in the world. Just make sure that you've got quality tools. Taking it apart, you've got a place to keep all that hardware as it comes flying out of the knife if you're going to disassemble it. Let's go ahead and talk about materials here. So on this guy, like I said, there's a bunch of different versions of it. Like this one is plastic, and then it's using OS 8. I'd honestly rather pay double and go with this aluminum and S35VN variant. It is running on nylon washers, which we see sometimes for cold steel knives and other knives in general. I wish it was phosphor bronze, but it's not. That's just what it's using. On the inside here, you know, despite this being pretty heavily milled aluminum, we do have full steel liners on the inside. Those are definitely steel liners, and that's definitely what's the lockup here, what's interacting with the blade. So the weight on it, I'm going to measure the blade stock thickness here in a sec. I think this will probably come in at 5. Okay, not terrible. 4.73, that's not bad, right? If you're big into ratios, you're not going to be really impressed by that. But honestly, that's right within it's actually the bottom of my preferred carry weight range. So yeah, I don't think it's that big of a deal. If you're not big into, you know, large, long, pointy knives, then this isn't going to be your thing. If you've been carrying knives like the Bug Out, right, then it's probably not going to be your thing. But I don't think it's going to be that problematic in terms of weight. There's going to be some other things that are going to bother you, which we'll talk about. Blade stock thickness on this guy, I'm going to guess that's 100 and... No, that can't be right. That's not right. Let's try again. Is it really? Okay. What? Is that really the blade stock thickness? There's no way. It's really that thin? Is it tapering? No, I've got a hold of it. Okay. All right, well, let's put it up against the Ritter Hogue. Okay, Ritter Hogue's 125 thousandths. Okay, all right, well, then it is. It really is just that thin. It's thinner than I thought. All right. It's one of the thinner cold steel knives that I've handled there. Okay, so moving on to the meat and potatoes of the review. This is a thumb stud opener knife, or for people who are like, does he know that it has the wave feature? Yes, I know. When I did the unboxing, people were so mad. You didn't figure that out within the first 5 minutes of handling it? Oh my gosh, amateur. Yeah, so you can deploy this with a thumb stud, and it does work, right? Action is what you'd expect with nylon. It's fine. It's just not going to have that luxurious action that we expect from our knives now today, but it's fine. It'll definitely work, and there's not a problem with it. It's doing what it's supposed to be doing. This tab right here, right, you can wheel it out like that if you want, or, you know, if you want to, you can put this in your pocket and pull, and as this very aggressive flipper tab catches the seam of your pocket, it will actually deploy the knife on the way out so that you can, you know, like if you're really hungry and your hands are really slippery and all you have is a bag of Lay's potato chips and you can't get it open, and you just need it open as fast as possible, you know, bam, it's ready to go, right? So there you go. You can do that if you want to. Most of the time, and by most of the time, I mean 99.99999% of the time, it will just be easier to simply pull this knife from your pocket and deploy it with the thumb stud, or like this, right? But whatever, you know, use your best judgment, enjoy the knife for whatever legal reason you want to. That's fine with me. The thumb stud does stick up past the surface of the scale here a little bit, which allows you to grab at it despite there not being any other room, right? They didn't scallop this area out, but you can see there it's actually sticking up past the frame just a little bit, so you can get your finger under it and deploy it. I found that most of the time, the back of that tab right there runs right into my finger, and it's not really that big of a deal. I'm just like, oh, I feel it, you know. But this thumb stud is pokey enough and aggressive enough that after 5 to 10, you're going to start feeling it on your thumb, right? This isn't a couch flipper knife. This is not going to be for the fidgety folks, right? That sounds silly to a lot of people, but I can promise you at least half the people who are watching are definitely concerned with that. And I'm one of those people too. I like to sit around and kind of mess around with my knives, right? It's definitely going to wear into your finger, and disengagement, you do have to push your finger into this little area and push over on the honestly pretty aggressive liner lock, right? I'm telling most people by the 20th flip are going to go, I'm done with that. This isn't a knife you can absentmindedly do that with without getting annoyed after a certain amount of time, at least subconsciously. So is it easy to open? Yeah, it'll do that when you want it to, right? But it's not something you're going to want to sit around and do over and over and over again. And even, you know, on the first one, you're going to notice like that is a little bit less. It's probably, you know, it might be easier on your fingers to simply, it's obviously made to do this, right? But again, consider the settings you find yourself in most of the time. Most of the time, you're like, oh, I need to open this package, right? So it's going to be kind of ridiculous in a setting that doesn't call for haste to pull this knife from your pocket and have it deploy this way. I know that I'm going to get some heated, like, you should consider the other elements. No. Just most of the time I'm going to want to deploy it like that or probably like this, right? And it'll work, right? It's just not going to be as comfortable as a Spyderco, right? Like this or like this. It's just not going to be as comfortable. It's just not going to do that. But okay, just letting you guys know. Moving on here, the blade is bead blasted, which is fine. It's not my favorite finish in the whole world, but it'll work. Fortunately, the steel is corrosion resistant. This is S35VN, as you can see right there. So this is a stainless steel. It's also an excellent steel. It's one of my favorite steels ever. Reasonable toughness, holds an edge for quite a while. Yeah, very well-rounded. Definitely a steel that used to be exclusive to the premium territory. I remember when you couldn't get S35VN on any knife that was under 150 bucks. So it's pretty amazing that this knife comes in at 87 bucks considering the materials, right? Fit and finish all the way around is pretty good. Like I said, it was a little bit off-centered. That's probably from it being used. Don't be surprised if it comes that way from the factory. But truthfully, fitment of parts and everything, I mean, we're looking at a cold steel knife. We're not looking at one of the most ultra premium cold steel knives that's ever been made, but it is a cold steel knife, and I generally expect pretty darn good fit and finish, and this is no exception. The tolerances are good enough that I could adjust it and get it totally centered up while keeping the action pretty much the way that Steve had it when it came to me, right? It's smooth enough. Engaging, disengaging, I can do it, and I can definitely deploy it. So that's a good sign that the tolerances are all the way that they're supposed to be. It's weird to me that the thumb stud is, there's just one thumb stud. Well, actually, no, it's not. If it had both thumb studs, you couldn't have both thumb studs up because of how that's positioned right there, right? It's just not going to make sense. This is pretty much, it is exclusively a right-handed knife unless lefties really want to try the reverse flick, which, you know, there's no mounting position for a left-handed carry as well. So you do have these things sticking out when it's, you know, when the knife is, let's say you want to get this knife out of your pocket and you don't want it to deploy. You're going to have to make a conscious effort to make sure that that flipper tab doesn't interact with your pocket exactly the right, do I say the right way or the wrong way? When you don't want it to deploy like that, you're going to have to make a conscious effort when you pull it out of your pocket because it'll definitely snag. That's what it's designed to do, right? So it might be that you have to carry it a little bit out from the back seam, right? If that's not what you want to do. Some people will be like, oh, I'll just leave it in there and deal with it when I need to pull it out, right? It's fairly simple, but it is going to be sticking out a little bit, right? It's something that's going to be in your pocket, that's going to be messing with anything else that's in your pocket if you carry other things besides your knife. And then these are also sticking out while you're using it. And this jimping up here is sharp and aggressive. Like, I mean, because it's got a certain job it's trying to do. It's also achieving this classic sort of swivel guard Italian stiletto look, which a lot of people, I mean, I'm attracted to the way that that looks just because I think it looks cool, right? It's not super, like if you're really going to use this knife and bear down on it, you can get all the way up here. But what's happening is that tab is digging into your hand. So when you're wanting to choke up on the blade and get as close as you can to it to put as much pressure as you can into a cut, you're still about half an inch from the knife, but it's not comfortable. So you need to move your hand back here just a little bit to where you can squeeze it and not have that dig into your hand. Now you're much further from it. So can you still use it? Can you still cut stuff? Of course you can, right? It's just, that's not comfortable way up there. Your hammer grip's going to be, you know, back here, or, you know, there's just certain things that you might be doing with this that are going to make a little bit, it's going to be made uncomfortable by the presence of these things. They are very aggressive, very angular, and very sharp. There is a sharpening choil, so that's nice. There's a flat that runs out about 50% the length of the blade, And it also drops 50% down the height of the blade, which means despite the fact the blade stock is not super thick, it drops down to a pretty thick edge. This will not be a performance slicer. Can you sharpen it up? Will it cut? Yeah, but it's not going to cut as well as something like a PM2 that's fully flat ground. Despite it starting much thicker at the spine, 145 thousandths, it comes to a much thinner performance-oriented edge. This is more of a poker. Your puncture tasks or your breaching tasks, you can do that with this knife. It'll cut. It'll do what you want it to do. This isn't a hard use knife. I mean, we think of cold steel, we think of hard use. This isn't a knife that I would go poking and stuff and prying around. This bayonet style blade, because this is a false edge, it's just it's the swedge. It's not sharpened on both sides. This style of blade does not leave a lot of material out of the tip. It's definitely not. Even, you know, it almost doesn't matter what steel it is. That's something that you could easily snap if you're doing something stupid with a knife, right? Something that's not a knife task. Obviously, Steve uses this. I know Steve to be somebody who's not does not baby his knives, so it obviously can stand up to a reasonable amount of abuse. But you know, use your best judgment. I kind of wish the holes weren't there, but then again, it kind of does give it an appearance, I think, that is appealing to people who would be interested in this in the first place. It does give it a kind of a distinct look, and without the holes, it might be a little bit boring. So, okay, they're not really hurting anything. Oh no, there's no lanyard hole. How am I going to put a lanyard on this? Whatever. The pocket clip definitely carries shallow, which I believe, if I understand this correctly, is actually a benefit to certain people in certain circumstances wishing to deploy this knife quickly and with the method that it was designed to be deployed by, right? But again, for the vast majority of the situations that I find myself in, and most other people will find themselves in on a day-to-day basis, people using this as a tool, right? Which is what it's going to be used as most of the time. You just have a big old chunk of the knife sticking up out of your pocket. I think this knife would function almost exactly the same if the pocket clip were just higher, but it's not. So that's kind of a bummer. Clip itself is fine. Straight, dip, straight. You're going to have to fight it over your pocket a little bit, especially if you're wearing jeans or work pants, something with thicker seams. You might have to fight it a little bit, but for the most part, in and out of the pants, it's fine. Lockup is coming in, and I think they're all like this, at about 80%, something like that, maybe 85%. It is absolutely solid. That's what I expect from cold steel. There is no lock stick, but man, it does take quite a bit of force to disengage that. Part of the issue is that you don't have a lot of space to get in there, right? It is not comfortable to disengage it, and there's a lot of tension on that thing, right? When it is closed, it will stay closed. When it's open, it will stay open unless you're doing something stupid with the knife. Unless you are using tools to apply an inhuman amount of force to that blade, it will not disengage. Now that I've adjusted it, it is centered. You can see that right there, and it doesn't seem to be moving or anything like that, right? Final conclusions. At $87, it's pretty impressive that, you know, we've got a knife in what I assume is aircraft aluminum or 6061 T6, S35VN, and, you know, typical cold steel fit and finish. It's made well for what it is, the form that it takes, it's made well. This is not going to be the most convenient item for EDC. I understand that it may not have been designed for that. Whether or not that, you know, people are buying it for that reason, that is factually what it will end up being. What is the sentence I'm trying to? It will factually end up being used as a tool by the vast majority of people, the vast majority of the time. So it's important to talk about this, right? This is not going to be a convenient item for carry. It's going to be an uncomfortable item to use as a work knife most of the time. The geometry is, it'll work, but you're going to be applying a lot of excess force, right? You're going to be doing more of the work, and this tool is going to be doing less of the work versus something like this, or something like the Rat, right? It sure looks cool. I do like how it looks, right? And the materials are great. Pocket clips shallow. It is what it is, right? I'm sure it will serve the original purpose that it was designed for, but that's not what I will be using it for, right? So I have to consider, you know, is that going to be kind of a mess or not, right? Flipper tabs stick out. They're definitely, or the little, you know, the guards slash tab slash wavy thing. It's going to be sticking out. Thumb stud, it works after, you know, after a few flips. I mean, you really are putting a little bit extra effort into that, and you're putting, there's extra wear on your fingers, right? I love cold steel knives, and I'm always impressed by their fit and finish, and I'm also impressed by their ability to put things together with materials like this, you know, and quality like this, and then reduce it to a price like $87. The price is definitely, the price and the materials used are definitely the most impressive features of this. Outside of that, you're really going to have to force it. You're really going to have to love this thing so much, you know, to EDC it. There are so many other knives and tools out there, so many other tools in general out there, bladed tools, that I would recommend for general EDC over this thing, right? That's what we do on this channel. We talk about knives as tools. If you didn't know that, the last 1,800 uploads I've done over the last 3.5 years have all been about folding knives being used as tools. So that's just what we do here. But I'm hoping that this was beneficial for you. Can I recommend it? For people who love how this knife looks, right? Maybe you're familiar with cold steel, maybe you're not. You love how this looks, right? You're wanting to know, was it built well? I've already decided I like it and I want to carry it. I don't really care if it's great for EDC or not. I'm not really into all those enthusiast elements. I want to know if it's made well and if it's capable. Oh yeah, it's made well and it's capable. Absolutely. For those of you wanting to know, can I recommend this as an EDC tool? No, no. But it's up to you. That's the beauty of this is you can go, I don't care what you think, Complex. I want to pick that up anyway, which is fine because I link this stuff in the description whether I recommend it or not. I'm always going to speak my mind about stuff like this, and I have my own opinions on these types of items, right? But yeah, if you want to go for it, then go for it. But, you know, if you value my opinion, this doesn't make the best EDC tool, but it was neat, and I'm glad that Steve allowed me to look at it. I appreciate that, Steve. Thank you so much. I think that's really all this video needs to be. So yeah, please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.